Welcome. I am Kaylee Forbes, Interim Secondary School Counseling Specialist, and this is Guiding Success, a parent podcast series. Tonight's topic is going to be on understanding financial aid, but this series is really intended to support you, whether you're helping a student explore careers, choose the right college, or tackle financial aid. Each one of our sessions is aimed at practical guidance with expert advice and amazing guests to help support you and your student along the way. So no matter where you're at in the process, Guiding Success is here to empower you with the knowledge and the confidence to help your students achieve those goals. So let's take the first step together, if we can, for our guests with us tonight. Sarah, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Well, hello. Good evening. I'm Sarah Alvarez. I am the College and Career Coordinator at Northeast High School. And I'm really excited to make sure all of our parents know that every high school in Pinellas County has a College and Career Center with a dedicated staff member to help support their students.
And I'm Brene Hillard. I'm a PATH advisor. PATH stands for Pinellas Access to Higher Education, and we are a free resource for anyone in Pinellas County, from elementary school students all the way to adults who want to continue their education. Our team is here to help with college and career planning, as well as navigating the transfer process. So we're here to help you reach your educational goals with confidence.
We're so grateful to have you with us here tonight. Brene, you guys are such amazing supports in our college and career centers. But let's go ahead and jump in and discuss what we're going to be talking through tonight. So what's covered in this session? We're going to explain what financial aid is, what the FAFSA is, or the free application for federal student aid. We'll introduce you to the Florida financial aid application and even talk about our local scholarships with the Pinellas Ed Foundation. So a three-tiered approach. So with that, Sarah, what even is financial aid?
Yeah, so thank you, Kaylee. In simple terms, financial aid is money that helps your student pay for college or career school. So that financial aid can take the form of things like grants and scholarships, as well as work study and loans.
And grants or scholarships are often called gift aid because they're free money.
Right. Exactly. And you don't have to pay grants and scholarships that free money back. Mm-hmm. With work study, you're earning that money. And of course, with loans, we know that typically with a loan, you're going to have to pay back with interest at some point.
Absolutely. And the key takeaway, though, is that there is money out there to help pay for that education. Mm-hmm. And so we want to make sure you know how to look for it. So we are working, we have some technical issues. We do have some slides we're going to have up on the screen. But we'll get those slides pushed out to you as well after this event. But let's jump into, we talked a little bit about the FAFSA, or free application for federal student aid. Brene, break that down for us.
Sure. So the FAFSA is, that's how you apply for federal financial aid. This application determines your eligibility for things like the Pell Grant, federal student loans, work-study jobs, and many colleges, universities, state programs, even scholarships. They're going to use your FAFSA information to determine their own aid that they may give you.
That's right. So even if you think my family makes too much money, you still should be applying for the FAFSA because there could be scholarships you miss out on.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And excuse my coughing. But I think it's also important to note that a lot of colleges require you to do the FAFSA, right? And so I always say to everyone, if you don't apply, that means you have basically said to them, you can write a check. And so it is so worth applying because you just never know what you might be eligible for. And it is, after all, the FAFSA, which stands for free application, right? So everyone should absolutely try that. Sarah, what about completing the process? I think part of that is intimidating as to what do I have to give, what is needed, and, what are the first steps for that?
Yeah, so let's start by talking about when they should be completing it. So the FAFSA is going to open this year on October 1st. That's just a couple weeks away. So students and parents should actually be starting by creating their FSA ID now. It takes 1 to 3 days for the information to be verified with the Social Security Administration. And that's important because we want to make sure if your student is getting money, it's going to go to the right person. So they should be creating their FSA ID now on studentaid.gov. studentaid.gov, and then starting to gather up the information that they need. So they'll create their FSA ID as the first step. The second step, and by the way, they would do that on studentaid.gov. And then the second step is gathering that information, like you said, Kaylee. So to create your FSA ID, you're going to need your Social Security number. And then when completing the FAFSA, you're also going to need records of your taxes. There is something called the data retrieval tool that might import the taxes for most FAFSA completers, but just in case, have your 2024 taxes available, and also records of any untaxed income, as well as your current balance of savings, cash, and checking accounts, as well as non-retirement investments. And if you own a business or a farm, you need to know the current value of that business or farm.
Absolutely. And so, excuse me, I like to always explain to parents, because sometimes they're like, what is this FSA ID? And it's really, you're creating electronic signature.
Right.
And literally, though, the rest of their lives, they will use this. So I still use my FSA ID to manage, student loan payments or, whatnot to this day. So even your child, when they have a child, they will still use that same login. So it is kind of like them creating an electronic signature. And then, Brene, where do they go to complete the FAFSA?
So
Sarah?
Yes. Like she said, you're going to go to
studentaid.gov.
studentaid.gov.
I caught you off guard. It's after.
Sorry.
It's a long day. It's a long day. So studentaid.gov, I think the reason I want you to hear that again, studentaid.gov, is there are, people out there, and you can Google FAFSA and you can put in those terms, and you will find sites that are asking you to pay to use that platform to submit the FAFSA. And I've had this happen so many times in my career. So just to reiterate, the FAFSA literally stands for free application. So please do not pay to do that anywhere. It's on studentaid.gov, and that's where you would go to submit that FAFSA. And so with that, there's actually a lot of acronyms. Like, okay, you've submitted your FAFSA and you have this FSA ID. How do I know what information I need, right? What is a dependent student versus an independent student? Because I've searched, even in trying to build this podcast, and, there's all these amazing PowerPoints and, videos out there, and some of them are quite long. But what is the nitty gritty? Sarah, break it down. A dependent student versus an independent student.
So a dependent student is someone who is going to need parent information as a contribution or a contributor to their FAFSA. Most of our students are going to be considered dependent. Students who are living with a legal guardian, and again, we have to be careful about this terminology. So it's the legal guardian in the state that they live in, such as a HEAT program or in foster care, or are homeless or unaccompanied youth, they can be considered independent for FAFSA's purposes and would not need parent information.
And I think when it comes to a dependent student and parent household, a lot of times we do get questions about that divorced household, right? Correct. And so it's like, okay, my parents are divorced. Do I provide both of their information? Which parent's information do I provide? So do either one of you want to speak to how do I know whose information to provide for that?
So when a student has two parents, two separate households, the federal student aid says that they should be using the parent that provides the most financial support for that student. And that may not be the parent that they live with.
And I think that's important to note because that's a change. Mm-hmm. It used to be you provided the information for the parent with whom you lived. And they did change that. And they said, actually, no, it doesn't matter who you live with. It doesn't matter who claims you on taxes because that can alternate from year to year. It really matters as to which parent is providing most of the financial support. Correct. So I think that is a key indicator there. So the FAFSA opens, as Sarah said, October 1st of each year, right? Yes. Create that electronic signature on
the FSA ID.
FSA ID on, what was the website? studentaid.gov. And those list of things that you need are there. And then from there, once you've completed that FAFSA, we'll jump into that. But, I forgot about this. Brene, I know you're helping. I know Path is going to be at some of our sites. If you don't mind, maybe just plugging a little bit about our services that we're going to be offering countywide.
Absolutely. So, as you can see, the schools here, we will have a FAFSA night at each of these locations, and you can see the dates and the times. We really encourage you all to come out and get help. We're going to have financial aid experts there from even different institutions, and PATH will be at some of the events as well. You can also get some help with what we're going to talk about a little bit later, the Pinellas Education Foundation scholarships. And so definitely come out with your student because you'll have people there to help you.
Right.
Yeah.
And we intentionally launched these sessions the day it opens. You see we have Richard O. Jacobson, Tech High, there in Seminole. They are launching their FAFSA support night on opening day, October 1st. And the reason we're being so intentional and starting early with this is you actually have more opportunity. The earlier you apply, the more opportunity you have. And so there's no reason for you to delay it. I think you can list up to 20 colleges on the FAFSA now.
Correct.
So that's a huge thing. They probably aren't going to attend 20 schools. That's okay. There's no cost. List all 20 schools on the application. The earlier you apply, the more opportunity your students will have. And so if you do come out to the event, Sarah, just reiterate that list of things that you had gone over with them. I think one key thing is we are saying, hey, bring your kids' PCS student laptop with them if you can, because then we don't run out of devices to serve people. But reiterate that list of what they should bring those nights.
Yeah, so in addition to the laptop, obviously they're going to want to already have created their FSA ID, so they're going to bring that login and password. They want to make sure that they know how to log in. They're going to go ahead and bring their social security number just in case. If a parent maybe didn't create their FSA ID, they can do it then. If they are not a U.S. citizen and they need an alien registration number, they should bring that with them. Again, we talked about that data retrieval tool. In most cases, parents will be able to import taxes. And for the 2026-2027 FAFSA, which is going to provide financial aid for the 2026 academic year, 26-27 academic year, you're going to need 2024 tax information. So you're going to want to bring copies of that or have access to them, perhaps W-2s and other records of money earned. As we mentioned earlier, copies of bank statements, so cash, checking, savings, or digital access to that information. Again, that net worth of businesses or farms, if you own a business or a farm. And any untaxed income, for example, if someone is getting child support, they would bring that information with them. So that FSA ID is the first thing to get started with. Make sure you have that handy and bring it with you.
Absolutely. And we're going to transition into state financial aid. But one myth or thing I've often heard from people in regards to the FAFSA is, I don't want to give the government any more information, right? Like, I don't want to do the FAFSA. They shouldn't need all this information. And so normally what I just say with a gentle reminder is they already have all this. You do your taxes every year. The IRS has this information. And the rest of it really can't hurt you because they are figures that change. My checking account balance changes every day, as does my savings sometimes, depending upon what expenses are occurring. So it's not anything they don't already have. I would really encourage you not to hesitate to do that. And it is something that I want to reiterate. You want to do each year your child is in school because situations do change. So it's not a one and done for the whole 4 years. Every year they're in school, you'll need to do that. So we talked briefly about the FAFSA, which is the federal application for student aid. But we also have the state application for student aid. Do either one of you want to target that application?
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's the Florida Financial Aid Application, or the FFAA. Do we have a slide for that one?
So the FFAA, Florida Student Financial Aid, sg.org is that website. It is for Florida residents, right, Sarah? But there also are some things that are interesting that have changed. So there might be some questions around eligibility for military or things along those lines that have come up with Bright Futures. So if you have some of those unique questions, I would say put them in the chat. We'll come and we'll look at those. But it's for the student being a Florida resident and graduating from a Florida high school. And then what do you most commonly hear this application referred to, Sarah? When somebody is talking about this, what do they actually normally refer to it as?
So most students and families, everyone out there thinks that it's just the application for Bright Futures. And I do want to stress it is required if your student does become eligible for Bright Futures. But there's more in there than that. There are some other scholarships that you can only access if you complete this Florida financial aid application. So we really want students, all students, to complete the Florida financial aid application.
Which was strategically said that way on purpose, because I have so many kids when I say, have you done the Florida financial aid application? And they'll look and they'll go, and then I'll say it's, used for Bright Futures. And then they'll say to me sometimes, oh, I don't qualify for that. I'm like, no. It is the Florida financial aid application. So there's other things there. So really every student should be completing that application. And the good thing about this one is it is very brief, right? Like this is like a 3 or 5 minute application max. Yes. And the most complex part, I think, for a student is probably their social security number.
Right. And the thing that I really want parents to know is that they're not going to ask any financial information for the Florida financial aid application. This is something very, very simple that we can help them with in the College and Career Center. As long as they know their social security number, they can come in and complete this application, as Kaylee said, in about 5 minutes. So we're just making sure that if they're eligible for Bright Futures or some of these other scholarships, the state of Florida is aware that the student exists, and we make sure they get their money.
And I think it's important also to maybe pause for a minute on that Bright Futures thing. Because as a counselor, I feel like oftentimes I would hear that so frequently from kids, right? Like, I don't qualify for Bright Futures because of this or that. But there's actually 4 tiers to Bright Futures. Right. So we have they'll say is the FAS, the Florida Academic Scholar. You have a Florida Medallion Scholarships. And those are obviously big ones, right? 100% tuition and 75% tuition. Right. But we also have Gold Seal and CAPE scholarships. Do either one of you want to speak about those opportunities for students?
Yeah, so briefly, the Gold Seal CAPE is an opportunity for students that have certifications. There are a certain number of certifications they have. And if they achieve that by the time they graduate, they might be eligible for some money to continue in an Associate of Science program. So we want students to know that there is additional scholarships. The Gold Seal Vocational is for students that have been in a vocational program. Like at Northeast, we have an Academy of Information Technology, and we have an Automotive Academy and a Culinary Academy. Some of those students are going to possibly be eligible for that Gold Seal Vocational that they can then use at a school that's what we call a trade school or a career school.
And the CAPE program, a lot of people don't realize this, but it can carry on. So after...
Right.
Excuse me. Sarah?
Yeah, so when a student completes that Associate of Science in the CAPE, the Bright Futures CAPE program, they can actually request additional funds for a Bachelor's of Science to continue in that program.
I think the other essential thing that I often heard as a counselor from kids, I would try to convince them to do it, and they might say to me, I don't need that because I'm going out of state, right? And I personally know a student who they went out of state, and unfortunately, someone in their family took quite ill, right? And I'm so glad they listened to me and did that application for Bright Futures, because the Bright Futures scholarship stays with them for, if I'm wrong, right? 5 years.
5 years.
So 5 years. So if your seniors are graduating this year, and great if they got into their dream school out of state, right? But things happen. And sometimes they get homesick. All kinds of things might happen. And it's nice to know that for a bachelor's program, they can come back into Florida and they can activate that scholarship anytime in that 5-year window. So that's also something for parents. Make your child do this Florida financial aid application. Make them turn in their hours. They're doing them. Even if they're going out of state, it is literally a 3-minute application, right?
Right.
So with that, we've kind of talked about federal opportunities with the FAFSA and state opportunities with the Florida financial aid application, but there are also a lot of opportunities locally, right? Brene, can you speak a little bit to, local scholarship opportunities and things that families may need to be aware of?
Absolutely. So if your student is considering going to school locally, St. Petersburg College has a lot of partnerships with different universities where they could start locally, get their AA degree, and then transfer to a university. So the FUSE program is a partnership between SPC and USF. Ignite is between SPC and FAMU. The Transfer Connect program is with SPC and UCF. And the Transform program is with SPC and New College. And all of these programs are guaranteed admission so that you can get into the university. And most of them also include scholarships as well. So, to help make that transition more affordable as well.
And I am curious, is it just SPC or is it a state college? So if your
Actually,
kid chose, right?
You're right.
Like there is, what's the 2-year school? Florida Southwest State College down in Naples near Florida Gulf Coast, right? And they actually have residence halls or dorms. They all call them different things now, right? But some of my kids, I'm like, you know what? It's okay if you don't want to go away to a big school.
Yeah, right.
But they could do that opportunity. And even these programs with FUSE to USF, they're a state college to that university.
Yes. So
right?
even if they don't want to stay and maybe go to SPC, they have those partnerships with other
absolutely state colleges.
Yeah.
So, or maybe your child, maybe you guys end up moved to Hillsborough County.
Yeah.
These programs absolutely still exist. Those partnerships still exist. And I would say these partnerships, these are local, right? That we talked about today. But a lot of our institutions have these programs. So you could do Ignite from Tallahassee Community College to FSU or FAMU. You have, I believe, even some program opportunities at Santa Fe Community College to UF and Valencia to UCF. Yes. But a lot of those actually do transfer outside of that. So when you find of those, that's something to talk to your advisors about on your local campuses to see what that transfer process looks like, because it's not just about transferring to that university in a way to save money on the front end, but it's actually there's scholarship money when you do transfer to them as well, right?
Yep.
So, Sarah, outside of like enrollment and university money, right? And these are great transfer programs that exist. Talk a little bit about local scholarships through our amazing Pinellas Education Foundation.
Yeah, I am so excited to talk about Pinellas Education Foundation and the scholarships that they have put together or brought together. So, Pinellas Education Foundation is dedicated to supporting Pinellas County students. They went out and found over 130 scholarships that were just out there that you would normally have to find out about from talking to your neighbor or your counselor or something, and they brought those scholarships all together under one application. So it really streamlines the process for our students. So there's over 130 scholarships last year. I see a bigger number this year. Maybe there's more this year. I haven't had a chance to look at the catalog, but they are doing an amazing job of finding all of these scholarships, bringing them together in one application. And that scholarship application is going to open the same time that the Florida financial aid application and the FAFSA application opens. So October 1st.
The magic date, October 1st,
Magic
right? Mark
date.
your calendars, October 1st. Because with all of these things, it's just like a checklist, but like get it out of the way.
Right.
If you as parents can just be like, okay, this all of this is done so that when that admissions decision comes in, you're going to be at the top to get those financial aid awards. You're going to have an idea, hopefully, on some scholarships so that you are in a much better place. I promise you, the stress of like your kid just gets into their dream school and you're still applying for financial aid and you don't know what's going to happen there. So that is like my nugget of wisdom for parents. Your kids, you can't do all of their applications for them, right? But you absolutely can be driving this conversation and making sure that these FAFSAs and their Florida financial aid applications and these things are getting done. And again, all of those applications, remind me again, Sarah, when do they open?
October 1st.
October 1st. So we are excited. We are going to get to some questions here near the end of our program because I know that you have them, and that's why you joined us, this evening. And that's our goal, to answer your questions and ease those nerves a little bit. But before we jump into questions, there's other things that I just want to make sure you know about. Our school system uses Zello, and that's where your students do their applications for college and connect with Common App. But also, Zello is a platform where we have lots of scholarships connected. In fact, our Pinellas Ed application is there. The Florida Financial Aid application is there. So there's a great place your kids can build a scholarship profile, and they can be applying for scholarships. And anytime we learn of scholarships, we post them there, right? So it's a great one-stop shop for you.
So Kaylee, where do they find that on Zello?
So parents can go into Zello and go into the college application section and planning and look for those scholarships that way. But again, you know what I'd like to say? We have amazing experts on every one of our high school campuses. So I'm going to throw it back. We have Sarahs on every campus. And so our college and career coordinators are there. They can guide students through that and how to look that up. But as a parent and you're like, how do I look at that? We sent out instructions for you to access Zello, but you can always email me, ForbesM@pcsb.org. That's M as in Margaret. And I can get you access to that as well. So if you missed it out, so can your school counselors or your college and career center, so that you can be tracking those scholarships as well. So before we run into questions, I want to do like rapid fire. A few reminders for our listeners, right? The pro tips to making sure that they don't miss out on any of these things, right? So pro tip 1, what would you say they need to take away from this?
Well, I would say that they need to apply early and apply to everything. So the FAFSA, the Florida Financial Aid application, the Pinellas Education Foundation scholarship application, as well as looking for other scholarships on Zello or other resources and the colleges themselves. Apply early.
Absolutely. First come, first serve on some of those funds, right? So once they're issued, they're gone. Even federal money works that way in some cases. Brene, you got a pro tip you want to share?
Pro tip number 2, make sure the students and the parents are creating their FSA IDs before you start the FAFSA, because you'll need it to submit that.
Absolutely. So if you're coming out to any of these events you see up on the screen, right? Yes. You want to come out to Richard O. Jacobson on October 1st for us to support you. It is going to make your night much smoother if you've already created those FSA IDs, right? So another pro tip, Sarah, what would you say?
So students and parents, if you're working together on scholarships, you want to keep track of deadlines. So you don't want to miss one of those scholarship opportunities because you didn't submit in time. So especially for the local ones, not the FAFSA, but the Florida Financial Aid. Other than those, the local ones, Pinellas Education, track your deadlines.
I think we have one more pro tip.
Yes. Don't count yourself out. Even if you think you may not qualify, still apply, because you could always, you might be surprised that you actually do qualify for some aid.
Absolutely. So that is our crash course on financial aid. And if you take nothing else away from today, beginning October 1st, you can apply for the FAFSA,
the FFAA,
and the Pinellas Ed application scholarship, right? So you can do all of that. Don't let this process intimidate you. Again, there are counselors, there are college and career coordinators in each of your system campuses. There are even podcasts like this. It's our first, so we're ready to help. We're here for you. And then again, this isn't a one-and-one, a one-and-done deal, right? This is something that you do each year. But also, not only are we here to help you at your high schools, but we have great organizations and partners like PATH that are there to help you as well if you go to, a local school and then want to transfer on beyond that. And so just utilize those resources. Don't hesitate to reach out. And before we close our episode tonight, I want to take a minute and just kind of glance at the chat and see what questions maybe our audience might have. So let's see here. There are a lot of questions. So thank you so much for joining. I'm so sorry. Here's some of you who had some technical issues when we were working over some things.
I want to add something on the Pinellas Education Foundation while you're looking for the right question. So for the Pinellas Education Foundation scholarship application, there's something in there for everybody.
Yes.
Whether you're applying for a trade school or a career school or planning to go off to a university, there's truly something for every student. So make sure that you're using that application and applying.
So there were some questions on here asking about, like, if we have Florida prepaid, do we provide this information on the FAFSA if we're filling out that form as a parent?
So I'm not aware that you need to fill that provide that information on the FAFSA.
They will ask you on there about 529 plans and some other things along those lines, and they alter from year to year. And again, I would say that's why we'll have those financial aid advisors
Financial aid
there at those
experts.
events that they can answer that as well. Let's see. It says, will my child's FSA ID be connected to my own in any way?
No, when you start the FAFSA, the student is going to log in and they're actually going to request you contribute to their FAFSA. So they have their own FSA ID. You have to have your own. You cannot use the same one for both of you. They will request your contribution by putting in your Social Security number and your date of birth as well as your email. That's going to send you an email. You will log in and use your FSA ID in order to complete your portion. The FAFSA is owned by the student, so we really want to make sure that you know they need their own FSA ID, you need your own FSA ID.
Absolutely. And I see some questions on here about asking, like, what if you are the legal custody of a grandchild or someone? And in those cases, more than likely, they're going to be classified as an independent student because guardians do not provide financial information on the FAFSA. That is the role of parents, but that is something that when you come to those financial aid nights, I would bring that information there because situations can vary. But typically speaking, guardians do not provide financial information on the FAFSA. That is the role of the parent. Also, there was questions if you can clarify around FSA ID. They're saying, does the student need it or just the parent or both?
So again, both the student and the parent need their own FSA ID. Think of it this way. It's your login and your password, as well as your legal signature. Student has to sign, you have to sign. You have separate signatures, you have separate FSA IDs.
Perfect. So also on here, it indicates where do I bring my stuff? So they're asking that. Why do you guys keep saying bring your stuff? And so we're actually just letting you know to complete the FAFSA what you need, but we're also hoping that you take advantage of these FAFSA nights where we do have financial aid experts that are going to be at each one of these sites providing support to you so that if you do have some personal situations and you're uncertain on how you need to complete those FAFSAs, they will be there. So you can bring that information with you. And then there is a question about, like, what if they don't file taxes? There's a question on that. And so you actually, if you don't file taxes, that's fine because not everyone's legally required to file taxes. So you would have zeros for that. And on the question, there is a place for you to indicate that, but you would still have to indicate other income you may receive. So they might ask you about Social Security or disability or other things along those lines. So they do take in any income coming into the home into the FAFSA process. Here's another great question. Do we need to create a new FSA ID if we have a second kid?
No, that is a really good question. So again, think about it as your legal signature. You're not changing your name, you're not changing your signature. As a parent, your FSA ID is going to stay the same for all of your dependents, for all of your children. The students themselves own their own FSA ID. So no, you do not, as a parent, create a new one. You won't even be able to because it's tied to your Social Security number. When you start trying to type that in, it'll say, hey, there's already an FSA ID associated with that Social Security number.
So here's another question that a parent's actually asking about Bright Futures. And I don't want to go into all the details, but they indicate, their GPA, but that they just don't really test that well.
Right.
And like, what are their options for Bright Futures then if they can't test well? And so one that I'll speak to, and Sarah, maybe you can add some others, but one they added this year is around the AP Capstone Diploma. And so that is a pathway where the GPA that you've listed, your student's done well. And so if they do some of those AP courses, I can tell you that's been my experience. Kids will do well in a subject matter class, but they don't necessarily do well in those tests. And I think it's because they've been in that content all year. It's a course that they, might be really interested in. So the AP Capstone pathway does say if they are earning those credits in those courses and they take AP Seminar and AP Research, they can now earn qualifying scores for that Bright Future. So there are some other loopholes, and that's something I would encourage you to talk to your child's school counselor about to see if that might be a pathway that would work for them.
And Kaylee, if I could add to that, so some parents may not be aware that now for Bright Futures, there's the SAT, the ACT, and something called the CLT. So they are 3 different tests. And if your student is struggling with the SAT, you could have them try the ACT. They can even download a free practice test from act.org, kind of take it as the timing that they say it's going to be on the test and get a feel for it. And if that still isn't their test, they could try the CLT as well. So there's 3 different options for them to try the test. And there's also something called super scoring, which I think you can explain very well.
Absolutely. So super scoring is just quite simple. The test might have 2 parts. We'll keep it simple and say English and math, right? And so if your child takes that test twice, and maybe the first time their math score was really well and their English wasn't so great, but when they take the retest, their English score goes up, right? In that situation, they can take the English from the second test and the math from the first and put it together to create that super score for them. And so there are some opportunities. And also I would say, again, go by those college and career centers, talk to your counselors, because there's some amazing free resources available to your child in the district. And sometimes we don't do well on tests, and this is even my own child. I had to convince him of this. But it's just you haven't spent time in that content for a while. So you do need to do some test prep. It's, like I'm pretty certain that I could roller skate again. Okay, I'm going to use that as an example. But it would take me a minute. I wouldn't have confidence. I wouldn't want to let go of that railing, right? I wouldn't trust my body. There would be a lot of things. However, I know that it's a skill that would come back. Mm-hmm. If I went to the rolling rate, went skating regularly, it would. So as cheesy as that is, our kids have to go back and re-engage that content. Here's the thing. The SAT only goes really through about Algebra 2. Right? So some of our kids are well beyond that, and they haven't done that type of math in a long time. So I would say sometimes that anxiety is because you think you know it, and you're just like, I can't remember. So test prep is another thing. We have some great free programs, Albert.io, Khan Academy, and some things that they can take advantage of as well. I do want to pause. We're going to answer some additional questions, but my tech team is advising there has been some sound issues this evening, and they wanted to let everyone know we will be uploading online a clean audio version of this tomorrow that should be resolve these issues. So we apologize about that, but there should be a cleaner audio version coming up tomorrow. So one of the other questions that comes up is, I already have an FSA ID because you're in school. Do I create a new one for my child?
Yeah, so good questions. The child, again, has their own FSA ID. So they have one, it is associated with them, and the parent has one that's associated for themselves.
And your parent ID counts for you because you're in school as a student, and your parent ID counts for you as a parent doing it for your child. So you only need one as a parent.
Correct.
And you don't have to do another one just if you already have one and you're in school yourself. All right. So there's questions on here around volunteer hours and deadlines for those for Bright Futures. So there's a few things. Some of our high schools offer a course called Volunteer Public Service. And so that might be a great way to get plugged in if you can't always get somewhere, after school or on the weekends. The other thing I might make sure you know is I believe we've added paid work experience for Bright Futures as well, right?
Exactly. So the state recognized that not everybody has the opportunity to do volunteer work work
Right.
because they have to have a job. And so they added work hours as an eligibility requirement for Bright Futures. The key thing is that if a student is using work hours, it's always going to require 100 hours of work from as soon as they were a freshman all the way through senior year, 100 hours of work regardless of what level of Bright Futures they're looking at.
Perfect. So some of you have questions around situations where you maybe the child is living with you, but a parent might still be alive or around. And that is one of those areas that really should be talked about personally at your school. However, they might qualify under the HEAT program and meet the definitions under the McKinney-Veto Act. And so those are situations where if it's verifiable for various reasons as to why the child is not living with their parents or under the roof with their parents, they might very well qualify through the HEAT program. And that just identifies them as an unaccompanied minor, even though they may be living with a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle or a neighbor. So there are some programs I would say if you're in that situation and you're helping care for a child for whatever that reason may be, I would inquire with your school counselor and ask if you can talk to a HEAT advisor to see if that's a program that child might be eligible under. And the reason that's important is if they do deem them eligible under a HEAT, they're an independent student.
That's right.
So that means no parent information has to be given in that situation. So I see another question asking, do we create two parent FSA IDs? Do we need two parent FSA IDs, or is it just one parent FSA ID?
Yes, that's a really good question. Brene, do you want to answer that? Or
So my understanding is that they just need one FSA ID based on the one that they're going to be filing with the student.
Yeah, so and then if I could add to that, if the parents are married and filed taxes separately, or if they're not married, live in the same household, and again, filed taxes separately, think of it, 2 tax returns, you need 2 separate FSA IDs.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes. And so another question was on here is around when is the latest to earn those qualifying scores for Bright Futures? And I want to clarify, actually, they said to submit the FAFSA. So one, the FAFSA doesn't look at your academics at all, but the Florida financial aid application for some of those programs and Bright Futures does. And the good thing is they actually extend that deadline even past graduation.
Right.
So I believe it's August
30th.
30th? Yep,
right.
31st.
The last day of August.
So the last day of August.
There's 31.
And that rule, to be even more specific, is they have to have tested by that date. So this past year, we had students, I think, that tested like the 16th or 17th of August. And so as long as they've tested by that date, the state will look at those once those scores have been received. So August 31st is generally the last date to qualify for Florida financial aid scholarship opportunities. So somebody asked about, can we go to another high school if we can't attend ours? Absolutely. And they are amazing teams there. We'll have district representatives, we'll have college and career coordinators, counselors that can answer maybe some of those HEAT scenarios and questions. And then, as Brene said earlier, we'll have members of PATH at some of our sites. We'll have financial aid representatives from various different colleges in our community that will be there. So they're the subject matter experts to help you with doing those applications. You can attend any of these events. I would just say, to make it worth your time, do your FSA ID ahead of time, right? Making sure that you have that for both you and your child before you attend the event. And then, bring as much of that information as you can, because sometimes the linking doesn't always work. Do we need to apply for a FAFSA if he's going to trade school?
Yes.
Absolutely. You wouldn't believe the amount of programs. In fact, there are some international programs that your child might be able to do, study abroad, and they might actually be an approved school. So I would say if your child is going to school, technical college, 2-year, whatever it may be, even if you think they're not going to qualify, please do the FAFSA, do that application, even if it's nothing else than work study. Work study is a great opportunity for students. I explain it to kids. It's like TA in high school, right? Mm-hmm. You have that period. It's built into your schedule. You can go sit there, and sometimes you're just being paid to study. right? You're just there in case somebody happens to come in and you got to open a door. That's really nice in between classes to have that opportunity. Also, they don't pay FICA taxes. So, they could go get a part-time job somewhere else and they're going to be paying those taxes. But when they're doing their work on campus, they're actually making a little more money doing nothing. So it's worth it to do that FAFSA, even if you're not certain if they'll qualify. My email again, some of you are asking about getting access to that Zello. It's Forbes, like the magazine. And maybe if our tech team can throw up that banner for me, forbesm@pcsb.org. You can shoot an email to us. I also can be found on the website as well. And again, also your school counselors, if you can email them, they can always get into contact with me as well so that you have access to that as well. So then somebody asked a question about what if the child has a step parent? Do they look at both incomes in the same way?
So when you say to look at both incomes in the same way, I'll just clarify that if you are married, the student has a step parent, they will need to include the step parent's tax information as well as their assets in the FAFSA.
Well, I think we're going to go ahead and we only have about time for one more question tonight. But I think the main thing I just want to reiterate over and over, we kept them up there for a while, is we understand that this can be a daunting process, but it's so much less intimidating if you can come out to an event and get your questions answered by financial aid experts. We will continue to provide more opportunities for students and families throughout the district. If you've not already signed up, you can also shoot me an email. We have started a senior parent newsletter so we can push out important information. And I cannot recommend the College and Career Centers on your campus enough. They are so amazing at what they do. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us in support of that. We do need to wrap up this podcast for the evening. We thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to continuing to supporting you and guiding success and directing our students as they take their college and career plans post high school. Thank you for joining us.